Welcome to the League of Women Voters and Indian Prairie Parents Council candidate Q&A for the Indian Prairie School District Board. This event is being recorded. I am Susan Craighead, President of the League of Women Voters of Naperville. The League is a nonpartisan organization. We do not support or oppose candidates for public office. You can rely on the League to present fair and civil candidate events where each candidate is allowed an equal chance to respond. Local elections typically have a much lower voter turnout than presidential or midterm elections. Yet it is the local elections that have real consequences in our day-to-day lives. In many ways, our local officials have the most impact on our quality of life. I hope that your attendance here tonight means that you are making your plan for how you will cast your vote on or before April 4th. In addition to watching candidate events, live or recorded, you may also find candidate information on vote411.org, our nonpartisan online voter guide. All candidates have been invited to respond to questions, and their answers appear complete and unedited. A video of this candidate forum will be linked to Vote 411. And now let me introduce our partner representative, Robin Schmidt, first Vice President of Indian Prairie Parents Council.
Thank you, Susan, and good evening. My name is Robin Schmidt, and I'm the first Vice President of the Indian Prairie Parents Council, and I'm representing the IPPC this evening. The IPPC is the umbrella organization over all of the district PTAs and PTSAs with the mission of making every child's potential a reality by engaging and empowering families and communities to advocate for all children. The IPPC has worked with the League of Women Voters Naperville to produce the questions that will be asked to the candidates this evening. And now I would like to introduce Barbara Lymans.
Hi, thank you, Robin. Welcome to the candidate Q&A for Indian Prairie School District 204, sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Naperville and the Indian Prairie Parents Council. My name is Barb Lymans, a member of the League of Women Voters of Wheaton, and your moderator for this evening. I live in West Chicago, so I will not be voting for any of the candidates participating in the Q&A this evening. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that neither supports nor opposes candidates or parties for any office. The League is not affiliated with any political party. The League's purpose is to promote civic responsibility through the informed and active participation of citizens in government and civil civic discourse. Providing opportunities to meet candidates is a major mission of the League of Women Voters so that voters can become more informed about the issues facing their community and to become better acquainted with the candidates running for office. I would like to invite the candidates to now turn on their video. Participating in tonight's Q&A for Indian Prairie School District 204 will be candidate Katie Gens, candidate Justin Karubas, and candidate Mark Rising. The format for tonight is a Q&A and not a forum or a debate. Candidates are expected to accurately represent the facts, and their responses reflect their own views and opinions. The League of Women Voters is not responsible for the accuracy of statements made by candidates. It is a responsibility of the public, news media, opposing candidates to check statements made by the candidates if necessary. The candidates have agreed to abide by the rules set forth prior to this Q&A. All candidates attending tonight have signed and returned the ground rules by the deadline established in the invitation. These rules specify the format, time limits, broadcasting of the Q&A, and other rules related to the conduct of the Q&A. The candidates will begin in alphabetical order with their 1-minute opening statements. They will then alternate the order in which they answer questions for 1 minute. After the question portion of the forum, each candidate will give a 1-minute closing statement, continuing our alternating pattern. A member of the League will be acting as timer, and I will enforce the time limits. Candidates, you will see a slide to let you know that you have 30 seconds, and then 15 seconds, and then stop. Should a candidate exceed the time limit, I will ask them to finish their sentence and then move on to the next candidate. To ensure that the questions for tonight's Q&A represent a balance of topics, a panel of experienced league members have reviewed the questions submitted for appropriateness and to avoid duplication. Finally, I do want to say how appreciative we are of the candidates who are not only willing to serve in office, but who have agreed to be here tonight to share their goals and ideas. So let us get started. Candidate Gintz, you have 1 minute for your opening statement.
Thank you so much for having me. I want to start with that. Little bit about myself, understanding I am the new candidate of all of us here. I have actually been in the district for 11 years with my 2 sons. I have a junior at Waubonsie and an 8th grader at Fisher. I have been actively involved in all of the schools that my children have been in and have actually gone on to do district PTAs as well. I am currently president of IPPC. So I have a very huge passion for this district. I love it. I have seen the staff, the students, all the behind the scenes, and I look forward to moving on to a very different aspect of the district and working with a great group of people to help keep our students in the best district they can be in.
Thank you. Candidate Karubas, you have 1 minute for your opening statement.
Thank you, Barb. And thank you, League of Women Voters and IPPC for hosting tonight. I'm Justin Karubas. I'm a lifelong resident of Naperville. I went to Clow, Hill, and Waubonsie. And I have kids at Nequa. One's a graduate. And I have a map behind me right here. This is a map of Indian Prairie in Wheatland Township. I grew up here and I live here. So I've been around the area for quite some time. I've been on the board for 10 years. But prior to joining the board, I was 5 years on the foundation. And my father was a founding member of the foundation. My mom and sister taught in the district. So I look forward to talking further tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. Candidate Rising, your 1 minute opening statement.
Yes, thank you, Barb. Thanks to League of Women Voters and IPPC and Vote 411. My name is Mark Rising. I'm a current 12-year school board member and current vice president. I moved into the district 26 years ago. I have over 22 years of involvement in the district. My devotion to being an informed and involved parent kind of grew into wanting to be part of the school board and moving our school district forward. I moved here, like most of you watching this, because of our school district and our wonderful schools. I constantly strive to be the best advocate for all 26,000 plus of our students, our parents, our taxpayers, and our community members. I'm still going to focus on things, which is academic achievement, to make sure our students get, high performing curriculum and instruction, make sure that all our students feel welcomed and supported, fiscal responsibility.
Thank you,
204.
Candidate Rising. Thank
That
you.
was fast. Okay.
Candidate Karubas, the first question will start with you. What are the top 3 things voters should know about you which uniquely qualify you for the position?
First, what I alluded to in the introduction is the history. We've grown significantly. When I was born in Naperville, there was 20,000 people. Now there's 150,000. We built all of our schools at once. A lot of our teachers and administrators are retiring. And so we're losing a lot of institutional knowledge. It's good to have somebody that understands where we were so that we don't make the same mistakes again, so that we can make ourselves better. I'm an attorney, so I'm a policy-driven person, which is good for a policy-driven board. I'd like to make sure that we follow the law and stay out of trouble and stay, compliant. So I bring the attorney skills, and I have a vested interest by having kids in the district. So those are the 3 things.
Thank you. Candidate Rising, what are the top 3 things voters should know about you which uniquely qualify you for the position?
Well, I started attending school board meetings 6 years before I was elected. So I thoroughly involved myself in the district, and I actually am one of those people that loves school district finances. And while that may seem strange, a lot of things are driven by money. And in order to have our students be inspired and achieve their greatest potential, it takes a deep understanding of the finances. So that's one thing. I want to see all our students do good, so I'm constantly reviewing the student data. And then the last thing is, it's very important for me to have parent involvement in the decisions we make as a district and the decisions I make as a board member.
Thank you. And candidate Gens, what are the top 3 things voters should know about you which uniquely qualify you for the position?
Well, the first thing is what I alluded to in my intro as well. I have been very actively involved in the district since my son started 11 years ago, being on 4 different PTAs and, 2 district ones. So I do already have experience working with a lot of the district employees. I have seen a lot of the behind the scenes already. I am definitely learning a lot of new things as I'm running. But I've also got a very unique perspective in that I speak to parents a lot and staff on a very one-on-one basis. So I have an idea of what everyone's looking for, and I have a very vested interest having, 2 children in the district as well. So obviously I want to help make it, a good one.
Candidate Rising, what is your motivation for running for the Indian Prairie School District 204 School Board?
First and foremost, my love for this community and how it has enriched my family and my 2 daughters. But really, we have something to be grateful for. We have a great school district, and no one should really tell us differently. We have the 2nd best K-12 district in the state of Illinois and the 36th best school district in the country, 36 out of 11,000 school districts. I want to ensure that we continue to maintain the positive momentum of our district. We've got a lot of challenges ahead, and I believe I can be a part of that with my history and knowledge, being a school board member for 12 years and my involvement before that.
Thank you. Candidate Gens, the same question. What motivated you for running for the Indian Prairie School District 204 School Board?
I have a true love and passion for this district. I think it's amazing. I have watched how my 2 children have blossomed being in this district, both academically and socially and emotionally. I also really, I want to make sure everyone knows, I think this is a wonderful district. My last answer may not have conveyed that perfectly, but when I first moved here, I knew Indian Prairie was a good district. I actually had no idea just how good it was. And with all the changes happening right now, out in society and different regulations and everything, I would love to have a huge part in maintaining the success that we have had in the district.
And candidate Karubas, what's your motivation for running for Indian Prairie School District 204 School Board?
I literally want to give back. So I've progressed with my family to the point where I am not just concerned about my kids, but I'm concerned about the kids in the classroom. And I saw that firsthand in elementary school when one of my kids' friends couldn't go to recess because they didn't have boots. So I joined the foundation to assist those students. And then as I progressed through the system, I saw that there was greater needs, not just in that classroom, not just in that school, but also at other schools in the district. So I wanted to have a greater impact on the whole district in giving back to the community that has provided for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Candidate Gens, the next question will start with you. What do you consider to be the most important issues facing the Indian Prairie School District 204 right now, and how would you propose to address them?
Well, I think that there are a few issues, and I think first and foremost is the mental health issues that a lot of our students are having. And I do have to say the district has done an amazing job in finding funding for it. But what they're doing right now, I would love if we were able to expand to all the schools in the district and all the children. And again, funding is always a huge issue. So they've been doing what they can, getting grants, and it's been amazing. I would just love to keep expanding on that. I do know another big concern, for myself and a lot of parents is safety, safety of your children at school, safe from bullying, which is becoming a bigger and bigger issue in schools. As far as a way to solve that, I think that's why I want to be on the board so we can work on that.
Candidate Cruz, it's the same question to you.
Right. One of the big challenges that the district is currently experiencing is the fact that our buildings are all aging at the same time. Our staff is all aging at the same time. And so retaining that institutional knowledge and ensuring the upkeep of those buildings, it's hard to advance academic achievement when the roof is leaking. And so you don't hear a lot of advocates talk about we need to make sure we maintain the roof, but it's not a problem until the roof is leaking. But that's not a good way to run your finances. You need to invest in the infrastructure before the roof is leaking. So, and that's just one instance. Retaining the institutional knowledge as people retire, how do we pass on some of that knowledge of our traditions that have worked? Thanks.
Thank you. And Candidate Rising.
I think taking on what Katie and Justin said, finance has to do with all of this. And as many in our community know, we are a much underfunded compared to our comparable school districts. One of the biggest reasons that we did a strategic plan, boundaries, now going out for a facility study is to better manage and focus our resources to be more effective. And we continue to do that every year and look at areas where we can make efficiencies and look at areas where we can improve. And we'll continue to do that. The second thing I would say is advocacy at the local and state level, with all the state mandates that come down, with helping our municipalities better plan for economic development. I think that advocacy needs to be constantly monitored and pushed by our district.
Thank you. Candidate Krubis, the next question is this. How can the district better support students with disabilities and their families?
I think the best way to do that is to advance the individual education plans with advancements with supports for the support staff. We are struggling with hiring in that area, and so you have a plan, but how does that plan get practiced? And so we need to make sure that we have the staff to administer the plan appropriately. So I think we need to look at either recruiting or compensation to make sure that our support staff in that area is increased. Thank you.
Candidate Rising, your thoughts?
Yeah, this one is personal to me. Both my students had IEPs, and I was vice president of the special needs PTA for 2 years. One of the biggest ways we can support our families whose children have special needs or IEPs or 504s is to communicate the process and communicate the plan and how it works and how it progresses as their children get older, who's involved in that process, what the steps are, how things are evaluated, and how parents can advocate for their students and how the district is trying to support their students and what they can and cannot do. I think a lot of that needs to be continuously communicated as best as possible to support those families.
Thank you. And Candidate Gens.
This is one that's near and dear to me as well. I do have some with an IEP and one with a 504. And one thing I do want to start with is it is a very confusing process going through IEPs and 504s for the parents, which then kind of, trickles down to the students. So I do think if we could find a way to just better communicate the entire process and let parents know just how much of a voice they do have, that would be an amazing start there. And then I do want to also touch on something Candidate Krubis mentioned, which is the staffing shortage. We do have a significant one currently, and I think that to better serve our students, and because a lot of their IEPs and 504s say they do need to have, someone with them. And when we don't have the staff to do that, then we can't give the support that we absolutely want to give.
Thank you. Candidate Rising, what is your understanding of the current mental health needs of the students and the resources available to address them?
Well, clearly the mental health of our students, just in general, take away COVID. Our students are struggling nationwide. This is not just something that's unique to our district or to our state. This is happening all across the country. The resources are slim, and that's why we have been applying for so many grants. We've got $1.6 million in grants to address mental health needs this school year and through December of 2023. But at some point, that 1.6 million is going to run out to address a lot of those mental health needs. And let me clarify what this is for. This is for outside mental health services through local professionals or through our social workers or counselors. This is not our teachers, but this is helping our students, because when our students feel better supported mentally, they perform better in school.
Candidate Gens, your response?
Would you mind repeating the question, Barb?
Not at all. What is your understanding of the current mental health needs of the students and the resources available to address them?
I think that this is a very complicated, multifaceted issue that I deal with personally, and I've dealt with PTA presidents as they've talked to me in my role as IPPC president. So I would honestly say there's so many different things. My biggest thing is trying to get a counselor available at every single school for every student, because I do think a good first step for any child is therapy, and not all children have access to that outside of the school. So if there were a way we could get a counselor at every school, it'd be a good place to start, I feel like. I also think, going back to something I've touched on before, bullying and other negative things in school negatively impact children with mental health issues. So I do think if that's something, we can discuss and get a better handle on, that will help as well. But again, there's so many other parts of this. It's very complicated and multifaceted.
Thank you. Candidate Karubas, what are your thoughts?
The mental health needs of the students is great. There's no sugarcoating that. The resources available, really it takes the whole community. We have partnered with a lot of organizations, civic, charitable, religious, to try to get the services that the students need in this area. We have kind of consolidated some of that information as well on the webpage on mental health resources. And we recently had a mental health symposium over the weekend to try to get the education out to the community so that the parents, and it was well attended, but the needs are great. And we need to build up the kids so that they have some grit and learn the life skills as well. So there's kind of two prongs to that, but we're working on it.
Thank you. Candidate Gens, is the district providing teachers and support staff with the necessary tools and resources to adequately meet the goals of the equity belief statement? Why or why not? I'm going to repeat that question one more time because it's long and two-parted. Is the district providing teachers and support staff with the necessary tools and resources to adequately meet the goals of the equity belief statement? Why or why not?
I think for me, even it's not necessarily a simple yes or no. I do think that the district is doing all that they can. And I know we'll say this over and over, but funding is always an issue. The school board shares the same goal as the teachers and staff and really everyone in the district, that we want every student to be taught, every student to be educated. And there are so many resources that we need that they would love to give. And it's not that the staff is not, willing to do it. Sometimes it's not able. But I do think the district does a great job of keeping that a huge priority and listening, frankly, to the staff as they very honestly tell us what needs are not being met at the moment.
Thank you. Candidate Karubas, your thoughts?
No, we don't. We aren't adequately funded, so we don't adequately fund. We don't adequately fund every area of our district, and that is unfortunate, but that is the reality. There's just not enough funds to go around, so we have to strategically allocate our resources. That's one lens. The second lens is the equity aspect of it. And I look at this as kind of a compliance area where we have the law requires us to do equal opportunity, and we want to do equity. And then the law says resources need to be substantially comparable with each of the schools. So how do you provide the best resources to the students, the staff, without over allocating to each one of those three corners: equal opportunity, equity, and substantially comparable resources? So it's always a challenge, and the students and the teachers keep changing. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Rising?
From our equity statement, removing any barriers to ensure that all policies, practices, programs, and procedures support and affirm each student. We are committed to creating a culture where all staff, students, families feel safe, welcome, respected, and a part of the school community. Do we have the resources? Yes and no. We could always get more resources, but we also have to realize that our teachers are extremely spread thin. Our teachers are focusing on best educating our students, but to make sure that if a student is struggling, no matter what their background, in the equity definition, which is far more than just race, that all our students are supported and help is given where needed to help all students achieve their greatest potential. And we can always do better at it.
Thank you. Candidate Karubas, do you support having high school students start later in the day? Why or why not?
I support it in concept. In practice, I don't think it's going to happen during my lifetime. Medically, mentally, practically, I think it would benefit the high school students, but we're a unit district. And ultimately, it would come down to, does the community want it to have to happen? It would be a referendum, a community vote. We would need to triple our buses. We would significantly increase traffic. If we were to move the start time in a significant manner, not just minutes. So I understand that there's benefits, but from a practical standpoint, I think it's insurmountable. I'd be willing to explore it further with a task force or committee to look at it, but there's a lot of challenges, and I've wrestled with that over the years. Thank you.
Candidate Rising?
I would absolutely support looking at it. As Candidate Karubas said, I think it would definitely benefit our high school students. But the problem is we run the same buses for all three levels. So they pick up the high school kids and the middle school kids and the elementary school kids. If we reverse that, that causes a lot of issues, problems, and we already spent $22 million on busing. So it would significantly increase that. Something else you have to remember is if they start later, they end later. Sports go later, jobs go later. So then all of a sudden, they're ending up staying up later. Again, I am not opposed to it, but I need to look at it from all facets before it's something that I could support.
And Candidate Gans?
We're probably all going to sound very similar, but I agree. I think it's something to look into to see how much of the community would like it. I do understand why it's an appealing option, but I do also agree that if it's something that we genuinely want to look at, we do have to look at every facet of it. And that is the busing. That is the impact it has on the high school students after school. Because again, as you know, Candidate Rising said, it will be starting that if you start later, you end later. And we all know our high school students are extremely involved in activities, both at school and outside of school. So I think it is something that could absolutely be looked at further. But I think there's a lot more to consider than just my child would get to sleep in a little bit more.
Thank you. Candidate Rising, we'll begin with you. What, if any, sustainability green initiatives do you support, recommend for the district?
Well, we've implemented quite a bit of things, to turn on and off power, that's set on timers, the lights, in all our buildings. We had plans to install solar, that didn't quite pan out, due to the particular vendor. I know we've had presentations from our students that are looking at better and more effective recycling programs within the high schools. I know a lot of the elementaries have already put those in place in some of the elementary schools. So we're currently going out for that facility study, which is going to be over the next few months. And that's going to be one of the recommendations that's brought back, as well as some of the sustainability things we could look at. But I'm all for creating as much as we can, without spending a whole lot of money where we may not have it. But hopefully that will save us money in return.
Candidate Gens.
I agree. I would love to have solar panels, but if that were ever an option. So it's definitely something we can look into. I do think schools are great with their recycling programs. One thing I do miss from most schools that I've seen is there were a lot of elementary schools that used to have like a public garden where they would have some plots, and then, other community organizations would have some. So I would love if there was a way to get back to that too, because even just something as simple as, having food, flowers, all of that, which kind of helps the ecosystem in general. But I do think that the district is constantly looking at it and taking strides to, be as green as we possibly can be, again, with our funding being an issue. And, some schools have particular issues as well that it may not be feasible.
Thank you. Candidate Krubas.
Yeah, two areas that I would look into with this on the sustainability, environmental impact aspect would be our parking lots and our vegetation. I think we have a lot of parking lots, and we could when I said that it's getting old and we're replacing things, and we're doing that with the parking lots as well. So we can look into the permeable bricks, like are at the Whole Foods, which can help with the runoff. And then we can add trees. A lot of our schools are near parks, and so we can vary our vegetation with native plants, prairie plants, trees that can cool our buildings, and provide benefits for the kids as well, like during recess. So I think there's a win-win there in those two areas. Thanks.
Thank you. Candidate Gens, what changes should be made on the state level regarding the funding of public education? In 1 minute.
Obviously, I was going to say, I would love if they fund us more. No, honestly, I do think that the evidence-based funding, there has been an increase in that, but unfortunately, it only touches a very certain amount of districts. So I do think that tax dollars should remain with public schools, as that is what the purpose of public schools are, and the services that we provide are tremendous, and the amount of students we have, it's a huge number, and many districts, are a similar way. So I think obviously if there's more funding available, it should be allocated to public schools as much as possible, because a lot of our schools are playing catch up funding wise.
Candidate Krubas, you have 1 minute to tell us what changes could be made to the state level regarding the funding of public schools.
Yeah, from a practical standpoint, I think we really need to lobby, advocate with our local legislatures and our lobby groups to tweak the evidence-based funding formula. It's an experiment. We as a state tried 5 years ago, and we've run it for 5 years. And it's worked out pretty well for the tier 1. It hasn't worked out really well for the tier 2 districts. And so in order to, I think, advance the purpose of the formula, we need to make sure that the formula is taking into account the needs of the tier 2 districts. So I think advocacy to reevaluate the formula. What are the local resources? What tweaks that can be done to make it more equitable? Thanks.
Thank you. Candidate Rising, your thoughts?
Yeah, so and just to explain the tiers, the tier 1 are the poorest, and we're a tier 2 district. Most of our surrounding districts or our comparable districts are tier 3 and tier 4, and they don't rely as heavily on state income like we do in District 204. It should also be noted that Illinois as a state, from a state level, funds education one of the worst in the country. The reason our property taxes are so high is because Illinois relies on property taxes to fund public education. If public education was funded better, property taxes would be lower, like you see in a lot of other states across the country. As the way the funding is currently, and it's remained flat, and the majority is going to tier 1 districts, until they increase that funding, it will take us 20 years to be adequately funded as a school district. That needs to change.
Thank you. Candidate Kurulis, do you see a need for more locally derived revenues, such as a referendum? Why or why not?
That was a great explanation, Mark. I just want to say that. Do I see a need for more local revenue? Yes, I do. We're going to have a needs assessment that's put out. We're going to figure out how much the buildings are needed, how much we want to update our classrooms, how much we want to reduce class sizes. Everybody has their desires. How much is that going to cost? And we mentioned that we weren't adequately funded according to the evidence-based funding formula. So the state isn't going to chip in. So I think we should give the voters a chance to vote on whether they want to provide additional funds so that they can get things done like lower class sizes. I'm very proud that we got elementary air conditioning done without having to go to referendum, but it took a long time, and I'd like to speed things up a little bit like that. Thanks.
Candidate Rising?
Do I think we need a referendum? I think all things always need to be on the table. The first item in our oath of office as a school board member is I shall respect taxpayer interest by serving as a faithful protector of the school district's assets. And that includes our homeowners' property values. And if we're not keeping on par with other school districts and our schools aren't remaining as great as they can be, property values drop and lower. So I think, like the board said when we did the boundaries, is all things have to be on the table and looked at. I think all things financially always need to be on the table and looked at. And a lot of the things that we've done with the strategic plan, the facility studies, we'll be able to see where we are as a district and how we move forward.
Candidate Gens, your thoughts?
I agree. I think it's something that we should always remain open to. And again, I love that parents voice their opinions of what they are looking for, which is the same things really we're all looking for, the lower class sizes everywhere. Having more staff, being able to, maybe, fund more. But I think when we give them a voice like that, it's great to also give a voice to say, do you want to be part of us being able to make that happen? Because the reality is state funding is not changing for us, anytime soon, at least. We could all be pleasantly surprised. You never know. But, exactly, I know. But so I think it's something that we need to always keep open, because our funding is going to be changing at a district level as it is throughout the next few years. So it's a very real option.
Candidate Rising, what recommendations do you propose to address the disparities in academic achievement?
Oh, that's another one where we could spend an hour on this. You know, it's something that we've focused on for the 12 years, almost 12 years I've been on board, is to closing that academic achievement gap. And we continue to make small improvements, but not great improvements. And, you know, I think this takes a lot of intentional effort on behalf of the board, on behalf of our schools, on behalf of our teachers, to close that academic achievement gap. Again, this comes with resources. This comes with smaller class sizes. This comes with support staff, which we can't get. As I mentioned in one of my goals, you know, academic achievement, we need to make sure that supports and are there for our students who are struggling academically. So it's a continuous effort.
Thank you. Candidate Katz, what recommendations do you propose to address the disparities in academic achievement?
You know, I think this is a very big topic, but a lot of it does start with the resources for our students. There are so many that do need resources that they're not currently receiving, which again comes down to funding. Support staff, you know, need to find a way to hire, frankly, more staff in our district. It's not unique to our district, I know, but, you know, I think that's a good place to start. I do also think that sometimes IEPs and 504s need to be evaluated a little differently because I do think sometimes children fall through the cracks, or there are some things that would benefit them that are not on their IEPs and 504s, which again comes down to parents maybe not knowing how much they can advocate for all of that. I think that that's a start, but obviously I think it's something that needs to constantly be evaluated and discussed throughout the board and the district staff.
And Candidate Karubas, what recommendations do you propose to address the disparities in academic achievement?
I would think we should focus on the advancing the achievement of the lowest performing, not solely based upon location or race, but from a math standpoint, if we advance the lowest performing students, then the achievement as a whole will increase. So I think if we focus on the lowest performing, that'll give us the biggest bang for the buck. I think in doing that, if we develop a individual education plan for those students, and it doesn't have to be as involved and as formal as what is done in the special ed area. But what do we need to do to move these students to the next level? We'll close the gap automatically, but but getting that done is the $1,000 question. So I don't have the answer to that.
Candidate Gens, what is the role of schools in teaching children about topics outside of the core curriculum?
I think that obviously core curriculum is very important. No one, you know, would argue that one, but I do think social emotional learning is very important too. We're trying to obviously give every student the best education we can. And part of that is actually helping to teach them how to understand the outside world, how to understand the dynamics inside the schools, how to better, you know, communicate their needs. And these are not things that come naturally to a lot of children. So I think teaching those kind of things are just as important as core curriculum, because there are certain things that you can't teach in science and math, but the skills are just as important for success after school.
Candidate Karubas?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. What is the role of schools in teaching children about topics outside the core curriculum?
Schools have a tremendous role in teaching students outside the core curriculum. We were just mentioning the mental health aspect of it. That's not part of the core curriculum. We need to build up students so that they don't get bullied, so they don't bully. So we need to teach students how to regulate their behavior in a positive way so that they can learn math, so that they can sit and read. So how do you interact in a large group? How do you interact? Some of our greatest achievements in public schools have been part of the extracurriculars, the before schools, the after schools. So schools are no longer a one house, one classroom. We offer plenty of services, and it's vital to do all of those things.
Candidate Rising.
Obviously, parents want their students to achieve highly academically. And that takes teaching the most important things, the core subjects. But here's the thing, as a district, we brought together parents, students, business owners, community members to create a portrait of a graduate. And some of those skills into a portrait of a graduate are what all of this large group of people determined were the most important things the student should have when they graduate. Of course, it was academics, but it was also citizenship. It was critical thinking. It was problem solving. It was creativity. It was innovation. Unless you're teaching things outside of the core curriculum, you can't have those conversations. So it's important that students are prepared for post-secondary or life after 204.
Thank you. Well, candidates, we have time for one more question. And this question will start with candidate Carubas. And the question is this: what do you see as the board's role in addressing issues of student behavior and discipline?
The board has a pretty well-defined role in as a governing body. We want to monitor what the superintendent has been doing with so we're looking for reports. Is there a problem area at this school? Is there a problem area with this activity? So our role is to not be in the classroom, but to say, well, this school might need some additional resources because they have a certain negative behavior there. Or this school needs, some additional support staff because of the same thing. So we are, as a governing body, supposed to require reports, monitor the performance, and then direct the activity where we want resources to go. Thanks.
Thank you. Candidate Rising?
Yeah,
What
much
do you
like
see as the board's role in addressing issues of student behavior and discipline?
well, I'll take the first one, behavior. By making kids, again, feel welcome and supported, and heard and valued, that has a long way and a great deal to do with the culture that you create within the school and can have a major impact on their behavior. Discipline, it's pretty outlined, as candidate Karub has said, of what our role is, and that is setting the policy on discipline. We have a consistent discipline plan for certain discipline behaviors that is implemented by the appropriate people at the school level, whether it's the social worker, the counselor, the dean, the principal, whoever it is. But as a district, we have to also educate all students. We are a public school district. So it's important that we create appropriate behavior and culture, and then make sure that we're setting the appropriate discipline and following through with that.
And candidate Gens?
I agree that it starts with, frankly, being as welcoming as possible to every student, having, I think, students feel like they're seen and heard and understood, even if not agreed with all the time. I think that goes a long way to, obviously not solve all behavior problems, but there are a lot of children that, just want their voices heard and feel like they're not. So they may act in a way that's not appropriate. But I do agree, obviously, with candidate Rising and candidate Karubas, that as far as discipline goes, there are things set in place already. But what I would like to add is, I think that as things are changing and we're finding new problems, frankly, at schools in the district, if it becomes a very consistent thing, it's something that should always be reevaluated and looked at.
Well, it's time for closing statements. So let us begin with your 1-minute closing statement. Candidate Rising.
Thank you again to the League of Women Voters and Indian Prairie Parents Council. Outside of my faith, my family, my friends, District 204 means a great deal to me. I've dedicated 12 years on this school board, and I look forward to serving another 4 years. I will continue to be present in our community as I have been, as much as I can, to make sure that I'm the best representation of all our parents. I represent all our parents equally, and it's important for me to hear the voice of parents, students, our staff, our community. But it's also important for me to continue to advocate and work collaboratively and constructively with my fellow board members to make sure that we are appropriately setting the future, the goals, the mission of our district appropriately. Thank you for your time, and it's been a pleasure serving.
Candidate Gens, your closing statement.
Well, I want to thank you, League of Women Voters and IPPC for hosting this event again. It's been wonderful. But, I'm a stay-at-home mom. My entire life, for the most part, has been my children, which as an extension has become the district. And I think of really all the students that I've encountered, and even ones I haven't had the pleasure of encountering yet, just as much as my 2 children. And 11 years on all different PTAs, being at school day in and day out, basically for 8 years at our elementary school. I got a very unique perspective from staff, from students, and that kind of, lit my passion even more for this district. It's an amazing district. I feel honored, frankly, to be able to work with the board that we have, respectfully and openly to continue to make this district the best it can absolutely be for everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Candidate Karubas, your closing statement.
Well, since it's an uncontested election, we have already started to try to work together as a board. So I would promote our availability, that the community can reach out to individual candidates. I'm available through justin4204@gmail.com, or you can follow me on Twitter @Karubas. So that's part of our outreach. I also get stopped at Costco every so often. So I think we are available, and we're trying to work together as 7 people to best represent our district. So we're not soliciting the votes as much as we need your input on a lot of these issues so that we can be the best that we can for you. Thank you.
On behalf of the community, let me thank you for being here this evening. Our democracy thrives when all of us are engaged. Attending or watching a candidate event is an excellent way to be empowered to join discussions on local issues and make your voice heard on Election Day. We hope that each and every one of you will vote and inspire your family, friends, and neighbors to do the same. Early voting begins on March 20th at select locations. Additional information on how and when to vote can be found on 411.org and the Naperville League of Women Voters website and social media. Recording of this Q&A for District 204 school board candidates can be found on the Naperville League of Women Voters YouTube channel. So I thank you all, and good night.